Okay, we're holding in the Kamma Vav base. Zion base.
Okay. We have, if according to two,
Oh, okay.
right.
So before you go into this, and we've missed a couple of shirim, so let me just give just a little preamble over here, just to get us into the context. Is that when you have a ganaf who steals anything, we've learned this is chayav kefil. If he gets caught, I'll be two witnesses. So if he steals a book, then he not only has to pay back the value of the book or the value of the book, but he has to pay back double. Okay, but there's a special din when it comes to an ox or a sheep, or a goat for that matter, which is that if he shechted it or if he sold it, then he has to pay back 4 times the value for a sheep and 5 times for an ox. And that's what we're diving into over here. Is one of these interesting little combinations of if he gets convicted on one count but not the other, and we can do the chazara on that now.
If according to two witnesses a person stole, and according to them or according to 2 others he slaughtered or sold, he pays a 4-fold or 5-fold payment. If one stole and sold on Shabbos, stole and sold for idolatry, sold and slaughtered on Yom Kippur, sold from his father, slaughtered or sold it, and then his father died, or stole and slaughtered and then consecrated, he pays a 4 or 5-fold payment. If one sold and slaughtered for medicinal purposes or for dogs, or if one slaughters and is found to have an organic defect, or if one slaughters an ordinary animal in the temple courtyard, he pays the 4-fold or 5-fold payment, and Reb Shimon exempts him in these 2 cases. If according to 2 witnesses a person stole, and according to them he slaughtered or sold, and then are found to be false, they are paying full.
Right. So Adim Zomam, remember they have to do kasher zamam. So if they try to make him chayav in 5-fold payment, then they wind up having to pay him 5 times.
Okay. If according to 2 witnesses, all right. If according to 2 witnesses he stole, and according to 2 others he slaughtered or sold, and both of them were found to be false, the first one's pay the 2-fold payment, and the second one pays the 3-fold payment. If the second ones were found to be false, he pays the 2-fold payment and then the 3-fold payment. If one of the second ones
no. And then, in other words, the first pair of witnesses stood. So he did steal it, but the ones who said that he shechted or sold it, they turn out to be zomim. So the ganav has to pay back the kefil, but the Adim Zomim have to pay him triple payment because they try to make him chayav another 3 times. So he comes out ahead.
Right. If one of the second ones is found to be false, the second testimony is void. If one of the first ones is found to be false, the entire testimony is void. For if there is no theft, there is no slaughter and no sale.
Right. So once the witnesses of the theft have been undercut, even though the witnesses of the shchita or the mechira are still valid, so what? If he didn't steal it, he's allowed to shecht it or sell it.
Right.
So the whole thing gets yeah.
If according to 2 witnesses one stole, and according to 2 witnesses or by his own confession he slaughtered or sold, he pays the 2-fold payment, but does not pay the 4 or 5-fold payment.
Right. And the reason why that is because we say hamode beknas pater. If you admit to something that's a penalty, if it's called a knas, then he doesn't have to pay. So if he's admitting that he did it, okay, so he admitted it, there's nothing to do.
If one sold or slaughtered on the Sabbath, sold and slaughtered for idolatry, stole from his father, and his father died, and afterward he slaughtered or sold, stole and consecrated, and afterward slaughtered or sold, he pays the 2-fold payment, but he does not pay the 4-fold or 5-fold payment. Reb Shimon says, for consecrated animals for which he is responsible, he pays the 4 or 5-fold payment. For these, and those for which he is not responsible, he's exempt.
Okay, so just to clarify Rabbi Shimon's words over here, Rabbi Shimon is talking about if the owner was makdish the animal, and then the ganav came and stole it. So if it was a harezu, where the owner had no responsibility for it, so he didn't really take the loss. So he says he's not chayav achrayosam. So then the ganav is not chayav to pay kefil or arba b'chamisha. But if the owner takes the monetary loss because he said Harei Alai, and then he was makdish this one. So he still has to now contribute something to the mikdash. So he did take a loss, and therefore he's the kuda over here is he stealing from a private individual, or is he stealing from hekdesh? Because if he's stealing from hekdesh, there's no knas. He has to pay it back, but there's no kefil or arba v'chamisha. But if he's causing the loss to that person himself because there's an afrayos, then he still does pay the arba v'chamisha. However,
Hold on, excuse me 1 second. I'm home, but my wife is calling me. Hello. Okay. I want to have the last thing you said was
right, that Rabbi Shimon has this shita about if he causes the loss to a private individual, then he still pays the knas. But the halacha doesn't follow Rabbi Shimon, and if the animal that he stole was hekdesh, then there's no kefil or arba b'chamisha. Okay. So on to our new Mishnah for the day. So if he sold the animal but retained a share of 100th in it, in other words, he just 100th just as a minuscule percentage of some edible part of the animal. So he hasn't completely sold it. So basically, it's going to come out that he's going to pay the kefil for being a ganav, but he's not going to pay the arba v'chamisha for the mechira because he didn't make a complete mechira. 99% mechira is not a mechira, so he only pays the kefil. Okay, we'll see that in the. I just wanted to jump to the end of the sentence, otherwise the Mishnah just rattles off all these cases, and you're in suspense for what the halacha is going to be. So all these cases are going to be where he's going to be pater or he's chayiv in the kefil, but not in the arba v'chamisha. Or shehaisa lo bo shutafus. He's a partner in this animal, and then he steals it and then shechts it. So he's got a 50% share in the animal, or whatever share he's got in the animal. It's already partly his. So it's not a complete. It's not a complete beneva. So the kefil he pays on the share that's not his, but the knas of arba b'chamisha he doesn't have to pay because he had a partial ownership in the animal anyway. Okay. Also, hashochet v'nisnabla biyado. If he did a shchita and the animal became in the vela the way he did the shchita. In other words, the difference. This is different from the previous case we had where he shechted and it was found to be a treifa. So the shchita. So the difference between a treifa and a vela is where the shchita is good. Okay, if the shchita is good, but you open the animal up and find that it's got a hole in its lung, that's a treifa. Okay, there was nothing wrong with the shchita. That's called the treifa. But if he messes up the shchita itself, right, or let's say the knife had a nick in it, or he didn't shech the simanim properly, and he waited for too long. There are lots of different ways, as we learned in Chulin, of how you can passel up a shchita, and then the animal becomes an avela, not a treifa. Okay, so if it was nevela and so hanocher, he stabs it, or he uproots the simanim and he cuts them from the back or something like that. Okay, so there it's not called a shchita. So with a treifa, it's called a shchita. Although we saw that one of the Tanaim, I think it was Rabbi Shimon, disagreed that he was still that he would still be tied, that he would be pater on that. But in this case, for the ganeva again, mishalem tashlume kefil because he stole, but eno mishalem tashlume arba v'chamisha because it wasn't really a shchita. Okay, it's kilu he shot the animal in the head. It's not called a shchita. Okay.
Before you said that if he's a partner with one, so he pays half or whatever he pays. Do they decide? Is there a thing with the let's say the bull or the cow, whatever, where let's say there are two parts. Let's say there's the frack and the front, and they cut it in half, the front and the back. Is one worth more than the other? Like one because it has certain parts that they use, or
and you're getting into like heavy detail over here. I mean, whatever their agreement is the percentage that he owes. If they just have 50-50 share in the animal, which would be the typical way, I guess. I mean, I don't think anyone would say I'm buying the left half of the animal and you own the right half of the animal, while it's alive. That's not going to happen. I
was just thinking that if there was some parts that would go on the which we couldn't go now, but would go on the mizbeach, then that would be worth more maybe than other parts that wouldn't.
Or less because you don't actually and it's not actually yours. But I think let's just keep it simple and say we're talking about a percentage partnership. Okay.
Okay.
And just by the way, I need to make a point over here that we're talking about where in the beginning where he says he retained some ownership, like 1% of it, of the animal, but when he sold it, and it's got to be an edible part, because if he, for example, kept hold of the horns and then he sold it to somebody and he said, I just want to keep the horns, and the other person shafted it. Okay, so now the horns are not edible.
Right.
So he can't. So that's considered he sold all of the edible parts of the animal, and therefore he would be chayav in the knas of arba v'chamisha. So it's only if he retains an edible part of the animal that he would be pater from arba v'chamisha. Okay, praise on the Mishnah. Ganav birshus habalim. So he stole the animal inside the property of the owner. Okay, so he with tavach umachar chutz mirshusam. And he took it out and shefted it outside or sold it outside, or alternatively, the animal was outside the rishus of the balim. The tavachum lachar birshusam, and he took it back into the rishus of balim and shefted it and sold it there. Or or he did everything outside the rishus. Mishalam tashlumi arba v'chamishay. There he still pays the fourfold of payment. Why? Because in order to lead the animal, you can make a kinyan on the animal outside the rishus of the balim. But if it's inside the rishus of the balim, if you're dragging it around on a rope inside his rishus, that mashicha doesn't work. You can't make a kinyan mashicha inside the seller's inside the owner's property. Okay, you can do hagbah. So we're not talking about where he actually went and physically lifted the goat. If he lifted the goat, then it's his and he's totally chayav. But if he's just leading the animal around by a rope inside the owner's property, then he didn't make a kinyan, and therefore he'll be chayav the nezek for having shefted the animal, or he'll just have to pay back the value of the animal, but there's no knas because he never stole it.
That's not right.
All he is a mazik effectively, because he never made a kinyan. All he is a mazik.
Right.
Okay. Patur. So if he sold it, or if he stole it and shefted it inside their property, he is patur. From patur from the knasim. Of course, as I said, he's still chayav in the nezek because he's just a mazik. Okay. Vav haya moshcho v'yotze. So now the animal's inside the rishus habalim, and he's taking it by the strap and he's pulling it out towards outside. The next thing, the animal died inside the owner's property. It's patur because it's not. He never made a kinyan,
Right.
and the animal just died right there. Obviously, we're talking about TRP. He didn't kill the animal himself. There needs to be a mazik. However, if he lifted the animal, or he actually managed to take it outside of the owner's property, but mace, and then the animal died, he's chayav. He's chayav as a gunner for having stolen the animal because he made a kinyan. So now he pulls a shtick and he tricks a kohen. So he's got he wants to give a gift to a kohen. He's chayav to give some sort of gift to a kohen for something, and he's got this animal over there. And he's like, so he calls the kohen over and says, "Listen, will you take this animal in lieu of my before?" And the kohen says, "Okay." So he's like completely innocent, doesn't know that this is a stolen animal. Or a bal chovo, he does the same thing to a creditor, or l'shomer chinam, or l'shoel, nosei sacha, l'socher, any one of the shomrim that he says, "Would you look after this animal for me?" And they're completely innocent. They have no idea that this is not his animal. The hayam moshcho, and now the second party comes and takes the animal outside the rishus habalim. The umes rishus habalim. So if it still died inside the rishus habalim, okay, it's still patur because nobody made a kinyan. If, however, the second party comes and lifts up the animal, basically makes a kinyan hakbah, or he removes it from the rishus habalim, and now the animal dies. Now who's chayav? The ganav. Now normally this is an interesting thing, because if the kohen had known, let's say, or the balchov, the creditor, if he'd known that this was a stolen animal, then we have a principle that ain't shlichus ledavar aveira, that you can't be a shaliach for somebody when to do an aveira. That means that if the balchov comes and says this animal's not yours, and And the Baal Chov says, okay, well, whatever, you'll sort it out with him. It's my, I'll take it anyway. So the Baal Chov knows it's stolen. Then there's no shlichus to the Avera. Then the Baal Chov is the one who's going to be chayav because he's the one who stole it. You can't cry up and say, no, but he told me to take it. You're responsible because you knew this was an Avera, and now you stole the animal, so you're the one who's the guy. But if he did it between us, he thought this belongs to the gunner, and then and he makes the kinyan. So then the shlichus does work, and then he becomes a shaliach for the gunner to steal the animal, and then the gunner is going to be the one who's chayav because he misled the debtor, the creditor, into thinking that it was his animal. It died outside. Now the gunner is chayav. Okay, you see how that works.
Right.
Okay. Zion, yeah. Ein megadlin behema daka be'eretz Yisrael. Okay, so this is like a completely different subject now. I'm not. I guess it got stuck at the end of this period because it's got nothing to do with the previous context. But I guess they had nowhere else to put this Mishna. So anyway, it didn't justify a period by itself. So ein megadlin behema daka be'eretz Yisrael. So we do not allow people to raise small animals in Eretz Yisrael. That's, in other words, sheep and goats. Right. In Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because because these small animals destroy seeds. They go around grazing whatever they find in the ground, and so we don't want them destroying the ground like that. Although it's very difficult because if you think about it, the Avos who lived in Eretz Yisrael were shepherds. Nonetheless. But Aval Megadlin Basuria over midbaros Eretz Yisrael. But you can you see that maybe is the point, that you're allowed to do it in Syria because we're not so concerned about places in Chutz La'aretz that have some dinim of Eretz Yisrael, and in the wildernesses in Eretz Yisrael. In other words, don't bring up goats and sheep inside settled areas in Eretz Yisrael because you're going to wind up destroying other people's crops. But if you're going out in the Negev and just feeding them on whatever scrub you find that's hefker, seder, that's fine, even in Eretz Yisrael. And megadlim tarnagolim b'Yerushalayim. They don't allow chickens to be raised in Yerushalayim. Why? Because of all of the amount of kodshin that are eaten in Yerushalayim. Not just talking about in the temple. We're talking about shlamim, things that can be eaten within the walls. Because why? Chickens peck around in the garbage piles, and next thing a chicken finds a dead sheretz, and like a little piece. You just need a lentil-sized piece of a dead sheretz to get mixed up with the kodshim, and it's a fairly far-fetched concern, but nonetheless they said we don't want to come into any chashashas because chickens do this kind of stuff, and just don't bring them up in Yerushalayim. V'lo kohanim be'eretz Yisrael mipnei taros, and also kohanim shouldn't ever raise chickens anywhere in Eretz Yisrael because they're always eating truma. So the same concern with chickens is that they're going to bring bits of shratzim into the Kohen's house. He's going to be tameh without knowing it, and he's going to wind up eating truma b'tumah.
Now I know why one of my granddaughters is a vegetarian. Not because it's true, but she thinks she's working on a farm, for a few years now, and she used to watch the animals that were on the farm and what they were eating and everything. Said, "That's it, I had it, no more."
Yeah, you can. I can get that because like people say, what's the reason why we don't eat pork? Because pigs are filthy, disgusting animals, and when you go to a cow shed, it's difficult to say that pigs are any more disgusting than cows.
It's true. Oh well.
En megadlin chazirin b'chol makom. Speaking of pigs, and this may actually be the source of why Jews have this intrinsic revulsion to chazir, because this goes back to the story during the Hanukkah story when you had Aristobulus and Hyrcanus who were busy fighting with each other for million, and one group was holed up inside Yerushalayim, inside the walls, and the other group was busy besieging them. But in the meantime, while this was happening, they had a little deal between the two groups. the one would lower money in a basket for them to go out and buy animals to bring in for the daily tamid. And they would so they would lower the animals, and the other group would say, listen, we need to keep the tamid going. We're all from Jews over here. We might be trying to kill each other, but we need to keep the tamid going.
They really did that? Wow.
Yes, they really did that. This is historical fact. By the way, it's not that difficult to resolve, because you could just have had, the warmongers on the one side, and the ones who want, the frum guys on the other side, who just like to wash more. And we just want to keep the tamid going. So you might have had people on both sides who were just like-minded and say, look, sorry about the war, but let's just at least keep the tamid going. There might have been kind of hush-hush that they were doing it, and managing to keep the tamid going between the two warring factions, until somebody on the besieging side got wind of the fact that this was happening, and said, this is the reason why they managed to hold out, is because they've got the skuss of the tamid going. And they said, yeah, instead of sending them up a goat, give them a chazer. So they picked up the basket, and up comes this chazer, and they said that the moment that this chazer put its foot on the walls coming in, there was an earthquake that shook the whole country. And at that point, they made a whole bunch of klalos on anyone who studies Greek philosophy. We saw that in Avodah Zarah, and they said, and they also made this gezerah on people raising pigs. And it's quite possible that there was nothing special about pigs up until that point. I don't know. It's difficult to say, but one can speculate that was the point where they raised a non-kosher animal and put it onto Yerushalayim. But they said pigs are asur. Nobody is allowed to raise pigs anywhere, not even in Chutz La'aretz.
But they do raise here some pigs, I think. I think they do raise some places.
Okay, the Isur.
Yeah, it is right.
Okay, but Isur. Okay, lo yigadel adam is a kelev. Okay, and a person shouldn't have a dog. Well, okay, so Kati adds helpfully a vicious dog. We're not talking about sort of a Maltese poodle kind of thing. We're talking about an attack dog. Unless it's tied by a leash, because you don't want people afraid to come past. It's got to be restrained. And we also, and Patty also adds the point that if you're living in a border town and you need the animal for self-defense, and you're even allowed to release it at night so that it's free to defend your property. Okay. And you're also not allowed to set traps for doves. You have to be a distance of 30 ris, which is about 4 kilometers. So why is this? Because people used to use doves. People had homing doves. They used to have doves that would, I don't know, for messages, but they would keep doves for whatever, maybe for food purposes even. And they would have these dove coats that they would always fly back to. So you don't want to trap doves that actually belong to people. And I said 4 kilometers from the yishuv is a safe distance to put out dove traps. Okay. Let's go. Dalet Gimel.
And if a bull of a Jew gores a bull consecrated to the temple, or if a bull consecrated to the temple gores a bull of a Jew, its owner is exempt. As it is said, another's bull, but not a bull consecrated to the temple. If a bull of a Jew gores a bull of a Gentile, the Jew is exempt. But if the bull of a Gentile gores a bull of a Jew, whether it be Tam or Muad, the Gentile pays the full damages. If the bull of a person of sound mind gores a bull of a deaf mute, a mentally deranged person, or a minor, its owner is liable. But if the bull of a deaf mute or a mentally deranged person or a minor gores the bull of a person of sound mind, its owner is exempt. The bull of a deaf mute, a mentally deranged person, or a minor gores the court appointed the court appointed for the appoints for them the administrator, and they forewarn them in the presence of the administrator. If the deaf mute gains his senses, the mentally deranged person becomes sane, and the minor becomes of age. The bull reverts to its status of a ratam, and this is made as view, and Rav Yossi says it remains in its present state. A bull from the arena is not liable to death, as it is said, if a bull gores, but not that it should be made to gore. If a bull gores a man and he dies, if the bull is a muad, its owner pays ransom. If it's a tam, it's exempt from ransom. Both are liable to death. And the same applies to a male child, and the same applies to a female child. If it gores a male slave or a female slave, its owner pays 30 selim, which it was worth a mana, whether it was worth a mana or whether it was worth no more than a dinner. Okay? All right. Yeah. Okay. Gets in.
Yeah.
We can't Aleph. Yes? No,
Yeah.
I missed one.
Yes, that's right.
Aleph. If one throws a get to his wife and she is inside her house or inside her courtyard, she is divorced. If he threw it to her inside his house or inside his courtyard, even if it was with her in a bed, she is not divorced. If he threw it to her in a lap or in her basket, she is divorced. If he said to her, take this note of indebtedness, or if she found it behind him and she read it, and behold, it was her get, it is not a get until he will say to her, this is your get. If he placed it in his hand and in her hand, and when she was sleeping and she awoke and read it, and behold, it was her get, it is not a get until he will say to her, this is your get. If she was standing in public property and he threw it to her, if it is real close to her, she's divorced. If close to him, she's not divorced. Half and half, she's divorced and not divorced. The same is true concerning condition, and the same is true concerning a debt. If his creditor said to him, throw me my debt, and he threw it to him, if it falls close to the lender, the borrower gains. If it's close to the borrower, he is obliged, and half and half. If both obligated, rather, he's obligated, if half and half. They both divide it. If she was standing on top of the roof and he threw it to her, and once it reaches the airspace of the roof, she's divorced. If he was above and she below, and he threw it to her, once it leaves the domain of the roof, even if it was erased or burnt, she is divorced.
Okay.
And Beit Shah, that's it. Subos.
Oh, right.
I need to get.
Nadarim, actually. Aleph Gimel.
Yeah, we should skip that. I don't have that out now. So why don't we just keep going and we'll go back to the dorm?
Okay.
We want to get. I can get it.
Okay. Want to go and get it now? Yes.
Yes.
Aleph Gimel.
One who says, not chulin, I shall not eat from or piggle, these I'm sorry, that's wrong. If one says, not chulin, I shall not eat from you, unfit or not permissible, ritually poor or ritually contaminated, leftover sacrificial meat or piggle, these declarations are binding. Like a lamb, like the enclosures, like the logs, like the fires, like the altar, like the sanctuary, like Yerushalayim. If he vowed and made reference to one of the accessories of the altar, even though he did not mention Korban, he has vowed with reference to an offering. And Rabbi Yehuda says, one who states Yerushalayim has not said anything. One who says offering, burnt offering, meal offering, sin offering, thanksgiving offering, or peace offering, that which I eat of yours, it is binding. And Rabbi Yehuda permits it. Korban, korban, or korban, that which I eat of yours, it is binding. The korban I shall not eat of yours, Reb Meir prohibits. One who says to another, coming on my mouth from talking with you, my hand from working with you, of my feet from walking with you, it is binding. The following are not binding. May that which I eat of yours be kulin, like pork, like an idol, like perforated skins, like carcasses, like trephis, like reptiles, like crawling creatures, like the kala of Aaron, and like Aaron's truma. This is not binding. One who says to his wife, you are to me like mother. We find grounds to know the nether from elsewhere, so that he not be lightheaded regarding such matters. One who declares, Kohanam, am I sleeping, am I talking, am I walking? Or one who says to his wife, Kohanam, am I cohabitation with you? This is governed by he shall not violate his word. One who swears shavua, that I shall not sleep, that I shall not speak, or that I shall not walk, is forbidden to do so.
Right.
And we have Arabic. We have Chet Daled.
No, Zion.
Zion?
Yeah. Must have skipped one yesterday.
Ah, okay. If a camel passes through a courtyard, we may not draw water from it on the Sabbath, unless they made a partition 10
Wait,
tefachim high.
canal, not a camel.
What is it? Canal.
Yeah.
If a canal passes through a courtyard, we may not draw water from it on the Sabbath, unless they made a partition 10 tefachim high at the inlet and at the outlet. That wouldn't work with a camel. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda says the wall over it is considered a partition. Says Rabbi Yehuda, it happened that there were the canal in Avel, from which they drew water on the Sabbath upon the ruling of the sages. They answered him because they did not have the minimum dimensions. If a balcony is above the water, we may not draw water from it on the Sabbath, unless they make a partition 10 tefachim high for it, either from above or from below. Similarly, two balconies, one above the other, if they made a partition for the upper one, but did not make one for the lower one, both are prohibited unless they make an error. If a courtyard is less than 40 cubits, we may not pour water into it on Sabbath unless they made a pit which can hold 2 saw. Below the opening, whether on the outside or on the inside, except that on the outside he must cover it, whereas on the inside he need not cover it.
Okay.
Okay.
Base 5.
So base 5, right?
Yeah.
A woman who has 5 tummy shades of blood, red, black, a shade similar to the radiance of a crocus, a shade similar to the earth waters, or a shade similar to diluted wine. But Shammai says also a shade similar to fenugreek waters, similar to the juices of roasted meat. Now Beis Hillel declares these shades tahor. The color yellow, Akiva Halalo, declares it tummy, while the sages declare it tahor. But Meir said, even if yellow blood does not convey tumah as a blood stain, it conveys tumah as a liquid. If Yossi says it conveys tumah either in this manner or in that manner. Zion, which shade is red? Similar to the blood of a wound. Which shade is black? Similar to the cheres. So deeper than this is tameh, and weaker than this is tahor. Which shade is it? Like the radiance of a crocus, similar to the most brilliant part of it. Which shade is like earth waters that produce when one takes soil from the valley of Ben-Karim and floats water upon it. Which shade is diluted wine? 2 parts water and 1 part wine of Sharon wine. If a woman expels a formless mass, if there is blood within it, she is tameh. But if not, she is tahor. Rabbi Yehuda says in either case she is tameh. And if a woman expels a red-colored object representing a rind, a hair, a dirt,
No, that's you're already on to the next Mishnah, and that's for tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Okay. Bechoros Aleph Beis.
Okay. And Kulin.
No, we finished Kulin. We're on to Bechoros.
Aleph.
Beis.
Sorry.
Aleph Beis.
Aleph Beis. If a cow bore something resembling a donkey, or a donkey bore something resembling a horse, it is exempt from Bechor laws. The pasuk says the firstborn of a donkey twice, until the bearer is a donkey and the offspring is a donkey. What is the status in regard to eating? A kosher animal bore something resembling an unkosher animal. If it is permissible for eating, but if it is an unknown kosher animal, but if an unknown kosher animal bore something resembling a kosher animal, it's forbidden to eat. But whatever comes out of something unkosher is unkosher, and whatever comes out of something kosher is kosher. If an unkosher fish swallowed a kosher fish, the kosher fish is permissible for eating. But if a kosher one swallowed an unkosher fish, it is prohibited for eating because this is not its growth. If a donkey which had not given birth bore 2 males, he must give 1 lamb to a Kohen, and if he bore a male and a female, he must set aside 1 lamb for himself. If 2 donkeys which had not given birth bore 2 males, he must give 2 lambs to a Kohen. If they bore a male and a female, if 2 males and a female, he must give 1 lamb to a Kohen. If 2 females and a male, or 2 males and a female, and 2 females, there is nothing here for a Kohen. If a donkey which had previously given birth and one which had not yet given birth bore 2 males, he must give 1 lamb to a Kohen. If they bore a male and a female, he must set aside 1 lamb for himself. As it states, the firstborn of a donkey which you shall redeem with a saw, He may be of a sheep or goats, a male or a female, old or young, perfect or blemished. He may redeem it with many times. It enters the pen to be tithed, and if it dies, one may derive benefit from it.
Okay.
One may not redeem it
Perfect.
from.
You're done.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Good. Thank you so much. Sorry about the time
And I
and the
wish
day,
you
Friday, and
good
all that
Sameach.
stuff. So tomorrow